just being in the NFL locker room as long as I was, being associated with players that have been able to make it to that level, you have to be a very, very special, not only type of athlete, and if you don't have the athleticism, you have to have a very special mentality. Because, man, the NFL and the NFL locker room is not like any other locker room in professional sports. You're talking about the competition. When you don't have the guarantees that you have in basketball, when you don't have the guarantees that you have in baseball long term, all you can do is prove yourself on a daily basis. So when you go down that 53-man roster, now you're talking about some bad guys. I tell a story that every bully from every city project, from every country town, from every big city is in the NFL. All the best athletes from all around the country, their cities, and sometimes all around the world, they're in the NFL. So they have extreme confidence in what they do. That's how you can forget about Jimmy G, what he thought about Tom Brady. What about Tom Brady, what he thought when he entered the league? The first day he met Bob Kraft, he told him, this is going to be the best
decision you ever made since you bought the team.
This guy's a multi-millionaire, and you got some skinny kid with nobody.
199th pick.
And what? Yeah.
He got beat out at Michigan by Henson. So the extreme confidence in the NFL, it's not surprising. I had a guy once in the prime of my career. I wasn't practicing a lot that day, and he was having a spectacular day. I'm not even going to say his name, but he and my teammates will know. He was a great special teams player. He was having a tremendous day in practice. I wasn't practicing. And the coach said, man, Walshy, you look good.
Go ahead. I love you so much.
And the thing about it is, he was like, yeah, if you designed the whole game plan around me and you round the whole offense around me like you do, Chris, I would look good. Well, the truth of the matter is he wouldn't, because he didn't have the overall endurance. He didn't have the mentality. He didn't have the physical skill.
He had a good day.
And he wouldn't be. He had a good day. And he was a special teams player. But you couldn't tell. Man, you couldn't tell him that he couldn't.
But he could have passed a polygraph saying that.
Absolutely.
And he would have passed.
And all of them, for the most part, believe this. I've seen some other great stories that I think are significant. I was at the first practice when Aaron Rodgers took over for Brett Favre, when all the chaos and Ed Waters following Brett Favre, is he going to play? Man, you couldn't tell Aaron Rodgers that day. I saw him. I caught balls from Aaron Rodgers that day. Me and Greg Jennings, Donald Driver on the sideline, and you couldn't tell them, or you couldn't tell Aaron, that he wasn't better than Brett Favre. One of the greatest quarterbacks ever, and at that time, maybe the greatest Packer, besides Bart Starr. Brett Favre is right there. And Steve Young. When Steve Young got traded from the USFL, from Tampa Bay Bandits, went to San Francisco, you know who he was backing up? Joe Montana. And you can't tell me Steve didn't think that he was a better quarterback than Joe was even at that time.
So, but listen, obviously Niner fans and maybe just football fans that root for as many great players as possible would love it to be the Aaron Rodgers story or the Steve Young story. I think it's important to note there are a lot of guys who are not Rodgers or Young that have this same mentality. Rodgers and Young had it, and they were correct. I'm not saying Young was better than Joe Montana, but he was right in thinking, man, I'm an all-timer too. Just wait till you see me. Rodgers was, I believe, correct in thinking, I'm better quarterback than Brett Favre, the greatest Packer of the last 40 years. But it's whether you actually get to that level or not, whether Jimmy Garoppolo, wins 5 Super Bowls, ever makes a single Super Bowl as a starting quarterback, you don't get the article on Bleacher Report that these quotes are in is fascinating. It had stuff in there that I didn't know, that he didn't pick up football till a later age, and when he did pick it up, he didn't pick up quarterback until a much later age, because he was 6'2" in junior high school, so he was playing tight end. That you don't get from Eastern Illinois to a potential first-round draft pick if you don't have that mentality. You certainly don't get from a backup quarterback to one of the richest contracts in football history if you don't have that mentality. It's something that, and you give me a hard time about this sometimes, I don't think it's just a mentality athletes have to have. I think if you want to be great in anything, you have to convince yourself you already are. The world just doesn't know it yet.
Yes, and the NFL has a mechanism with the competition every day. It's not, there are people in every walk of life that they think that. but they don't have competition every day
Right.
that would make them have to prove that out. Even if you're very, very talented, whatever field you're in, you're not going to be, your example at work is not going to be, Tom Brady throws a 15-yard out, and you know who's up next?
Right.
Jimmy Garoppolo.
It's not a head-to-head competition where they're keeping score each and every day.
Yes, and that brings out these competitive juices in people like Jimmy G.
Does that ever work to the detriment of a player? We
Of
talk
course.
about it being
Yes.
so great for the player to have all this confidence, but you wonder what happens if it's the opposite, if they have all the confidence and then they don't put the work in to back it up.
It's just like Nick Foles. Nick Foles said he's not going to get in a throwing quarterback competition with Carson. He said it's exhausting. He said it's not fair to the guy who is the starter. He said I'm there to support him. So when you have these types of competition, you have to realize too, like Tyrod Taylor, he realized he's got to help Baker out, but he's also realized, man, I might be the starter here for a year or two. So it's a balancing act. And that's why all guys can't be backups. That's why a lot of organizations, they get off of guys because they don't want that constant pressure and heat on their starter. Because a lot of starters do not thrive with having someone behind them because they feel threatened. And a lot of the stuff that we started hearing last year about Brady and New England and Garoppolo, those things are true. So I wouldn't be surprised because that happens.
That mentality, I think, can be great at almost every position for backup players, except for quarterback, in which case it can become problematic. There's no problem whatsoever if your backup defensive tackle thinks I'm the best defensive tackle on the team, right?
Yes.
That's actually a good thing. If the wide receiver you're mentioning, like if that makes him want to show out more on special teams and makes him work harder, and it's not going to cause an issue in the wide receivers room. It didn't seem like it did.
No, it actually helped us out because the days that I was able to take off, I knew. You know, like Walshy was going to handle things. And there were some days, too, that Walshy, because he used to like to stay on the town.
Here we go.
And then it'd be like, hey, see, can you get me today? And I'd be like, hey, Walshy, I got you, because you got more days of getting me. So, yes, there is a push-pull there in trying to put that team together.
But the quarterback position's a different one.
Because he's not going to play.
He's not going to play, and there has to be one voice. It's almost a streamlined voice. Head coach to coordinator to quarterback.
Yes.
Sometimes the quarterback's coach is sandwiched in there. And that's what I think you saw. And this is a great article. I wasn't really familiar with the writer who wrote it beforehand. I thought the color in it was great. I thought it also it came out right before. He clearly wrote it before the Jimmy G went on that date. But there's a lot of anecdotes about Jimmy G being quite the ladies' man of Eastern Illinois. And so now that we have a little more context there, it's worth the read is the point I'm making. So, but you saw in the article that he said he and Brady would have a competition after practice. One of them was, he's called it a barrel.
Yes.
I think a barrel competition, just throwing balls into the barrel in the back of the end zone. And that sometimes he would win and they wouldn't speak the rest of the day. So, like, that's good to an extent. And then at some point at that position, it can reach hey, it's one of us or the other. Because if the guy is good enough to be a starter, he can't be there forever. He can't just be the heir apparent in a sport or any sport where the clock is always ticking on the length of your career.
He did go on to clarify that no matter how bad it got, the next day they would always come in and talk to each other, which is great. And the article does lend itself towards who this guy is. He's a really nice guy. In high school, when he didn't play quarterback and he played tight end, it's because his good friend played quarterback and he didn't want to take his position from him. So it's actually a really good read. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from First Things First, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.